The serene morning at Currumbin Beach turned into chaos when a massive, great white shark launched a sudden, devastating attack. A mother was hurled from her paddleboard, her screams piercing the air as the predator's jaws tore into her torso. Blood churned the water, and despite frantic efforts from nearby surfers and rescuers, the ocean claimed her. In this video, we delve into 6 harrowing shark attack stories, each more chilling than the last, where peaceful waters became scenes of terror. Prepare for unforgettable stories of survival and heartbreak. On October 17, 1999, the early morning waves on Australia's Gold Coast seemed calm. Currumbin Beach was already alive with activity. A mix of surfers waxing their boards, families setting up umbrellas, and tourists dipping their toes into the clear blue water. Known for its golden sands and reliable surf, the beach had a reputation as a favorite spot for locals and travelers alike. Among the regulars were fishermen and marine enthusiasts, who often talked about the diverse sea life in these waters. Sharks, of course, were part of the ecosystem. The Gold Coast was no stranger to great whites. These apex predators could reach lengths of over 20 feet and were known for their powerful jaws, capable of crushing bones in a single bite. Experts often reminded visitors that sharks were not inherently aggressive toward humans, but opportunistic hunters drawn by movement and the smell of prey. In 1999, shark attacks were rare but not unheard of, and caution signs were posted on beaches where sightings were reported. For Lily Harrington, a 34-year-old mother of quadruplets, this particular day was a chance to escape the constant demands of her busy home life. Her children, James, Katie, Sarah, and Toby, were only 4 years old, and managing their energy left little time for herself. Lily had been looking forward to this break, a peaceful paddleboarding session in the calm waters of Currumbin Beach. Her husband, Ian, had insisted she take the day off while he handled the kids at home. Lily arrived at the beach mid-morning, carrying her paddleboard under her arm. The sun was already warm, and she wore a bright blue wetsuit, a simple protection against the ocean's chill. She exchanged smiles with other beachgoers as she waded into the water. Her board floated easily as she climbed onto it, paddling beyond the breaking waves where the sea grew calmer. The rhythm of paddling and the gentle rocking of the board were soothing, a rare moment of quiet for her. By noon, the beach had grown busier. Surfers carved through the waves closer to shore while swimmers stayed in the flagged safe zones watched by lifeguards. A group of teenagers played beach volleyball, their laughter carrying over the sounds of the surf. Far from the noise, Lily was alone in her small slice of the ocean. The water was a deep green here, clear enough to see schools of fish darting below. It felt peaceful. No one noticed when the shadow appeared. Below Lily's board, a massive form moved with silent precision. It was a great white shark, estimated later to be at least 15 feet long. Sharks in these waters were drawn to schools of fish near the reefs, but this one had ventured closer to the shore. The attack happened without warning. One moment, Lily paddled steadily. The next, a tremendous force struck her board from underneath. The impact flipped her into the water, and her scream tore through the air as she splashed helplessly. Beachgoers turned their heads, confused by the sudden sound, while a few surfers further out froze, unsure of what had happened. The shark struck again, this time with devastating precision. Its jaws clamped around Lily's torso, its serrated teeth cutting through her wetsuit and flesh. Witnesses described the scene as chaotic. The water churned red as the shark shook her violently, dragging her beneath the surface. Lily struggled, her arms flailing, but there was no escape from the predator's grip. Surfers closest to her reacted first, paddling furiously toward the disturbance. One man, later identified as a local named Travis, shouted for help as he neared the area where Lily had gone. Another surfer followed behind, hoping to scare off the shark by creating noise and splashing. But the predator was undeterred. By the time the surfers reached her, Lily's paddleboard had surfaced, broken in two, but she was gone. Lifeguards sprang into action. A rescue jet ski sped to the scene, and volunteers on the shore formed a line, scanning the water for any sign of Lily. The once busy beach fell silent as people watched, horrified. Parents pulled their children out of the waves, and swimmers hurried to the sand. The reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Minutes later, a lifeguard spotted Lily's body. It was floating several meters from where the attack had started. He reached her on the jet ski and pulled her aboard, but it was clear there was nothing more to be done. Lily had been bitten nearly in half. The shark's bite had been so powerful that it severed her midsection, a testament to the animal's sheer strength. As Lily's lifeless form was brought back to the beach, a mix of shock and grief rippled through the crowd. People covered their mouths, some turning away from the sight. Others whispered prayers or stared blankly, unable to process the violence they had just witnessed. Emergency responders arrived soon after, but Lily was not saved. Witnesses described the shark as massive, its dorsal fin cutting through the water before disappearing into the depths. Experts would later speculate that the shark mistook Lily for a seal or a larger fish, a common explanation in such cases. Great whites were known for their powerful bites and ability to detect movement from hundreds of meters away. Once they committed to an attack, it was almost impossible to escape. By late afternoon, the beach had been closed and a shark alert was issued along the Gold Coast. Helicopters scanned the waters for the predator, though it was unlikely to remain there. Meanwhile, news of the tragedy spread quickly. Lily Harrington, a devoted mother of 4, had lost her life in a brutal shark attack. Split in two, her paddleboard washed ashore as a grim reminder of the event, reaching her family and friends by that same evening. Her husband, Ian Harrington, received the call at home while playing with their 4 children. The weight of the loss was immediate and unbearable. Neighbors gathered outside their home to offer support, but Ian struggled to comprehend how he would explain to James, Katie, Sarah, and Toby that their mother was never coming back. The local community quickly rallied around the family. Fundraisers were organized to support Ian and the children, with schools, churches, and local businesses contributing generously. The events brought hundreds of people together, each offering what they could, whether money, meals, or emotional support. Lily had been a beloved figure, a mother, a friend, and a volunteer in her children's school. Her absence left a deep void. Meanwhile, debates reignited over beach safety and the increasing risk of shark encounters along Australia's coasts. Some called for greater shark control measures, while others defended the importance of protecting marine life, reminding everyone that humans were entering the shark's natural habitat. Lifeguards and marine biologists worked together to improve shark spotting efforts, installing new drone surveillance systems and updating protocols for beach closures. Lily's story became a haunting reminder of the ocean's unpredictable dangers. Her children grew up hearing about their mother's bravery, with Ian often telling them how Lily's strength as a mother and her love for them had defined her life. Every year on October 17th, the family visited Currumbin Beach to honor her memory, laying flowers near the shoreline where she had spent her final moments. The waves off Maui's North Shore on a bright July morning in 1997 were almost perfect. This stretch of Hawaii was known worldwide for its stunning beaches and legendary surf. By 9 a.m., surfers of all ages were out in the water, riding the swells and waiting for the next big set. Among them was 16-year-old Jake Rivera, a rising star in the local surfing scene. Jake had been surfing since he was a child, and he was preparing for an upcoming regional competition. His friends and other surfers admired his skill, but more than that, they knew him as someone fearless on the waves. Like much of Hawaii, the North Shore was also home to rich marine life. The waters here teemed with colorful fish, sea turtles, and sharks. Tiger sharks, in particular, were common in these waters. Known for their stripes and powerful jaws, these sharks could grow up to 14 feet long. They weren't picky eaters, consuming everything from fish to seabirds and even sea turtles. Although shark attacks on humans were rare, tiger sharks were responsible for a significant number of them in Hawaii. Jake didn't think much about sharks. Like most surfers, he knew they were out there but was more focused on the waves. He had woken up early that day, July 12, 1997, grabbed his board and headed to the beach. His father dropped him off at Ho'okipa, reminding him to be careful before driving away. Jake waved and joined a group of surfers heading into the water. The day felt ordinary, as did the morning Jake had experienced countless times before. The waves were consistent, offering long rides. Jake paddled past the breakers and joined a few others sitting on their boards, watching for the next good wave. He caught one almost immediately, carving smoothly down the face of the water. Nearby, other surfers cheered him on. Jake was in his element, smiling as he paddled back out to wait for another wave. Around mid-morning, the water shifted. The surfers noticed a stillness that made even experienced ocean-goers uneasy. Jake had just caught another wave and was paddling back when he felt something hit the underside of his board. He stopped, looking around, but the water was clear, and nothing unusual was in sight. He shrugged it off, assuming it was a large fish or maybe even a piece of debris. But seconds later, the tiger shark struck. The attack was fast and brutal. Jake felt an overwhelming force pull at his right leg. He screamed as the shark's jaws clamped down, its teeth cutting deep into his flesh. The water exploded around him, a mix of foam and blood, as the shark yanked him off his board and dragged him under. Stunned by the sudden violence, other surfers froze before paddling toward Jake as fast as they could. Jake thrashed and kicked underwater, his instincts driving him to fight back. He hit the shark with his fists, but it held on, pulling him deeper into the water. The pain in his leg was unbearable. He could feel the shark's teeth grinding against bone. He clawed at the water, desperate to surface, and after what felt like an eternity, he managed to break free and rise back above the waves. Jake gasped for air, screaming for help. The other surfers closed in, shouting and splashing to scare the shark away. One of Jake's friends, Mark, reached him first. He leaned over his board, trying to grab Jake's arm and pull him out of the water. But the tiger shark wasn't done. It surged upward again, its massive body cutting through the water, clamped onto Jake's leg a second time. The force of the attack knocked Mark off his board. He surfaced quickly, grabbing Jake's arm again. But the shark was too strong. It pulled Jake under, dragging him into the depths. The water churned with blood, staining the once pristine waves a deep red. The other surfers struck the water with their boards, yelling and splashing desperately to scare the predator off. For a moment, Jake resurfaced again, his face pale, his voice hoarse as he cried out. But the shark pulled him under once more. By the time lifeguards arrived on jet skis, the water had calmed. Jake's board floated nearby, broken and covered in bite marks. The rescuers scanned the area and spotted Jake's body several meters away. They pulled him onto the jet ski, but he was gone. The shark had inflicted catastrophic injuries, and Jake had lost too much blood. His leg was nearly severed and deep gashes covered his torso. The beach had gone quiet. Surfers and beachgoers stood frozen, some covering their mouths, others whispering prayers. Parents held their children close, and lifeguards quickly cleared the water, warning everyone to stay out until the shark was found. Helicopters were called to search the area, but the tiger shark had vanished. Jake's death sent shockwaves through the community. The teenager who had been so full of life just hours earlier was now gone, his promising future stolen by the ocean he loved so much. The surfers who had witnessed the attack would later talk about the terror they felt, knowing they were powerless to save him. An autopsy later revealed that Jake had succumbed to massive blood loss. The shark's repeated attacks had severed arteries in his leg and inflicted deep wounds across his torso, leaving little chance of survival. The loss of such a young, promising surfer devastated the community. Tributes poured in, and Jake's friends and family organized a memorial paddle-out. Dozens of surfers gathered on the water to honor him, forming a circle and scattering flowers in the waves where he had spent so much of his life. Jake's death also reignited concerns about shark activity along Maui's north shore. While shark attacks were rare, locals and marine biologists debated whether the increasing frequency of such incidents was linked to overfishing. Many believed that depleted fish stocks forced predators like tiger sharks closer to shore in search of food. Environmentalists called for stricter regulations on fishing practices, while others argued for improved safety measures for oceangoers. For many in Jake's community, the sea remained a source of joy and connection, but his death served as a sobering reminder of its dangers. On a hot July 1995, Dylan Torres set out with his friends for a spearfishing trip off the Florida Keys. The group, seasoned divers in their 20s, had been looking forward to this outing for weeks. They launched their small boat early that morning from Marathon, a bustling spot known for its turquoise waters and thriving marine life. The plan was to spend hours diving and return with fresh catches to grill for dinner. The Florida Keys are famous for their coral reefs, home to countless fish species, sea turtles, and sharks. Among the sharks, bull sharks are particularly notorious. These predators can grow over 10 feet long and weigh nearly 1,000 pounds. Bull sharks are known for their aggression and adaptability, often swimming in shallow waters where humans venture. Unlike other shark species, they thrive in salt and freshwater, making them frequent visitors near shorelines. Dylan was no stranger to these waters. At 25, he had spent most of his life near the ocean, learning to dive and spearfish from his father. That day, Dylan was excited. He carried his spear gun and wore a black wetsuit, moving easily through the waves as he joked with his friends while they prepared their gear. By mid-morning, the group had anchored their boat a few miles offshore, near a reef locals called the Ledge. This spot was known for its snapper and grouper schools, making it a favorite among spearfishers. The water was calm, clear enough to see several feet below. Dylan and his friends dove in, taking turns spearing fish and swimming back to the boat to drop off their catches. The group was careful, knowing that spearfishing could attract sharks. The blood from freshly speared fish often lingered in the water, drawing predators from far away. They stayed alert, scanning their surroundings for any unusual movement. By early afternoon, Dylan decided to go for one more dive before they called it a day. He spotted a large grouper near the reef and dove deep, holding his breath as he lined up his spear. The fish darted, and Dylan gave chase, firing the spear and hitting his target. It was a clean shot. He grabbed the grouper and began his ascent to the surface. That's when the bull shark struck. Dylan didn't see it coming. One moment he was swimming upward, the grouper in his hand, and the next, he felt an unbelievable force slam into him. The shark's jaws clamped down on his torso, crushing his ribs and tearing through his wetsuit. Dylan's mind raced, his body paralyzed with shock. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. He dropped the grouper as the shark thrashed, its powerful body dragging him downward. The water around Dylan turned red as the shark bit deeper, its serrated teeth ripping into flesh and bone. Dylan struggled, punching and kicking at the predator, but the bull shark was relentless. It shook him violently, tearing through his side as he screamed, the sound muffled by the water. Above him, Dylan's friends saw the commotion. At first, they thought he had dropped his fish, but the cloud of blood spreading through the water told a different story. Panic set in on the boat. One of Dylan's friends grabbed a harpoon while another threw on fins and dove in to help. They shouted his name, trying to locate him in the chaos. Dylan surfaced briefly, his face pale and twisted in pain. He reached toward the boat, but the shark yanked him under again before his friends could pull him in. The predator's grip was lower this time, tearing into Dylan's side as it thrashed. Blood and foam churned the water, and Dylan's strength faded. One of his friends reached him and grabbed his arm, pulling with everything he had. Another friend joined, holding on to Dylan's other side as they kicked toward the boat. The shark lunged again, its massive body brushing against one of the men. They screamed, thrashing their legs to keep the predator at bay. Somehow they managed to pull Dylan onto the boat, his body limp and bleeding. The deck of the boat was slick with blood. Dylan gasped for air, his chest heaving as his friends pressed towels against his wounds. His torso was mangled with deep gashes that exposed muscle and bone. One friend radioed for help, shouting their coordinates to the Coast Guard, while the others did their best to stop the bleeding. Dylan's breaths grew shallow. His eyes fluttered as he fought to stay conscious. Minutes felt like hours as the Coast Guard raced to their location. Dylan's friends stayed by his side, yelling encouragement and doing everything they could to keep him alive. But the injuries were too severe. The shark had punctured his lungs and severed several ribs, and the blood loss was unstoppable. Dylan's body went still before the Coast Guard arrived, his friends sobbing as they realized he was gone. The bull shark that attacked Dylan was never found. Experts later explained that the blood from spearfishing likely attracted the predator. Bull sharks are highly aggressive and have been known to attack humans in shallow and deep water. Their bite is one of the most powerful sharks, capable of easily crushing bones. Dylan's death became a grim warning for the spearfishing community in the Florida Keys. Even experienced divers like him could become victims in an instant. That day, July 15, 1995, started like any other fishing trip but ended in a way no one would forget. On April 17, 1993, False Bay in South Africa began its day as it often did, calm but alive with activity. This stretch of ocean near Cape Town was famous for its vibrant marine life and crystal clear waters. People came to swim, surf, and enjoy the coast's beauty. But it was also known as a hotspot for great white sharks, the apex predators that thrived in these waters. They were drawn by the colonies of seals on nearby rocky outcrops, their primary prey. Locals knew the risks, but rarely let it stop them from enjoying the ocean. Rachel Goodman, a 28-year-old schoolteacher, was one of those locals. Swimming was her daily ritual, a time to clear her mind before starting a busy day at work. Rachel had lived near False Bay for years and deeply loved the ocean. That morning she arrived at the beach just after sunrise. It was quiet except for a few joggers and surfers heading out with their boards. Rachel waved to a lifeguard on duty as she prepared for her swim, adjusting her wetsuit and slipping on her swim cap. False Bay's reputation for shark activity was well known. Great whites, which could grow up to 20 feet long and weigh over 2 tons, were frequently spotted here. These predators were feared but also respected. Marine biologists often explained that great whites rarely attacked humans intentionally. Instead, most incidents were cases of mistaken identity, with the sharks mistaking swimmers or surfers for seals. Rachel stepped into the cold water, wading past the breaking waves. She started her swim parallel to the shore, staying about 200 meters out. It was a routine she had followed many times before. The water felt calm that morning, and Rachel settled into her rhythm, her strokes smooth and strong. She loved being surrounded by the ocean, the quiet broken only by her breathing. Unbeknownst to Rachel, she was not alone. Beneath the surface, a great white shark was gliding through the water. These sharks were masters of stealth, able to move silently and strike without warning. It was a large specimen, estimated to be over 15 feet long. The shark's movements were slow at first as it approached Rachel, its senses picking up the vibrations of her swimming. The attack came suddenly and without warning. The shark surged upward, its massive body breaching the surface as its jaws closed around Rachel's midsection. Witnesses on the beach later described the moment as an explosion of water. Rachel screamed as the shark's teeth tore into her wetsuit and flesh, its powerful jaws crushing her ribs. She struggled against the predator, kicking and thrashing, desperately trying to break free. The shark pulled Rachel under, shaking her violently. The water churned with blood as the predator bit deeper, its serrated teeth ripping through her side. Rachel managed to surface briefly, her arms flailing as she gasped for air. People on the beach saw her and shouted for help. Some ran toward the lifeguard station, while others stood frozen, horrified by the scene unfolding. The shark circled back, its dorsal fin cutting through the water like a knife. Rachel tried to swim toward the shore, but her movements were weak, slowed by pain and blood loss. The predator struck again, this time grabbing her leg and dragging her further out to sea. The crashing waves drowned her screams, and she disappeared beneath the surface within moments. Surfers who had been nearby paddled toward the area, hoping to help. They scanned the water for any sign of Rachel, but all they found was a trail of blood and torn pieces of her swimsuit. The lifeguard on duty grabbed a rescue board and dove in, determined to do something. He reached the spot where Rachel had last been seen, but the water was empty except for the swirling red. Back on the shore, a man had already called emergency services. Within minutes, rescue boats arrived, their crews scanning the water for any trace of Rachel. Helicopters joined the search, their spotlights cutting through the early morning haze. The beach was closed, and everyone was ordered out of the water. Parents held their children close, and people whispered prayers as they watched the rescue effort unfold. The search continued for hours, but there was no sign of Rachel. The great white shark had taken her out to deeper waters. Marine experts later explained that the shark likely mistook Rachel for a seal. From below, her silhouette as she swam would have looked similar to the shark's usual prey. Great whites were known for their powerful bites, capable of easily tearing through flesh and bone. By the end of the day, rescue teams had only recovered shreds of Rachel's swimsuit. The reality of what had happened began to sink in. Rachel Goodman, a beloved teacher and friend to many, had been taken by one of the ocean's most fearsome predators. Her death sent shockwaves through the community, serving as a stark reminder of the risks that came with swimming in these waters. That morning at False Bay, what started as a peaceful swim turned into a nightmare. Rachel's story became a cautionary tale for locals and tourists, a grim reminder of the ocean's unpredictable power. On August 3, 2018, the Evans family woke early, eager to enjoy the highlight of their summer vacation in the Bahamas. Mark Evans, his wife Julia, and their children, 12-year-old Luke and 8-year-old Mia, had spent the past few days marveling at the island's pristine beaches and turquoise waters. The family had signed up for a guided boat tour, including fishing, snorkeling, and spotting marine life. For Mark, a 39-year-old accountant from Michigan, this trip was a chance to bond with his kids and create lasting memories. The boat set off from Long Island, a quieter part of the Bahamas famous for its untouched beauty. The guide, a cheerful local man, promised a day of excitement and exploration. The group aboard consisted of a few other tourists, all equally thrilled to venture into the clear waters. The first stop involved fishing near a coral reef. The crew handed out rods. Soon everyone was reeling in colorful fish. The kids laughed and cheered as Mark helped them pull in their catches. As part of the experience, the guides cleaned the fish on deck, tossing scraps into the water to attract more marine life. Luring fish for snorkeling was a common practice but had a darker consequence. The scent of blood and fish oils carried far through the water, and predators like sharks could detect it from miles away. Oceanic white-tip sharks in particular were known to frequent these waters. These sleek, aggressive predators were known for investigating boats and swimmers, especially when food was nearby. By mid-afternoon, the boat reached a calm, shallow area near another reef, perfect for snorkeling. Mark helped Mia and Luke adjust their masks and fins, while Julia watched with a smile. They entered the water together, holding hands as they floated above the vibrant coral. Schools of brightly colored fish darted around them, and a large sea turtle glided by, drawing excited pointing from the kids. The family swam a little further from the boat, their confidence growing with every stroke. Unbeknownst to them, an oceanic white-tip shark was approaching. The earlier chumming drew the shark, its powerful senses locking onto the scent trail. It moved with purpose, its distinctive white-tipped fins cutting through the water. From below, the silhouettes of the swimmers likely appeared similar to prey. While smaller than great whites, these sharks were just as dangerous and could attack humans without hesitation. The first sign of danger came as a shadow passed beneath the family. Julia noticed it first and instinctively pulled Luke closer. Mark turned to see the shark circling, its movements slow and deliberate. Fear shot through him as he realized the predator's intent. He signaled everyone to swim back to the boat, but the shark moved faster. The attack was sudden and violent. The shark surged upward, latching onto Mark's arm with its powerful jaws. Blood clouded the water as the shark's teeth tore through muscle and bone. The force of the bite dragged Mark backward, pulling him away from his family. He screamed in pain, the sound muffled by the water as the predator thrashed violently. Mark fought back, using his free hand to punch at the shark's snout. The shark released its grip momentarily, but it wasn't finished. It circled once more, its dark eyes fixed on him. Mark tried to swim toward his family, his injured arm trailing blood, but the predator struck again. This time it clamped down on his torso, its serrated teeth tearing through his side. Julia screamed for help, clutching Mia and Luke as they tread water, frozen in fear. The children cried, their faces pale with terror as they watched their father being dragged further away. The water around Mark turned crimson, the bright blue stained with blood. The shark thrashed again, jerking Mark's body back and forth as it attempted to subdue him. One of the boat's guides saw the commotion and leaped into action. He grabbed a long metal pole and dove into the water, shouting to distract the shark. Another crew member used a paddle to splash at the surface, trying to scare the predator away. The shark released Mark briefly, allowing the guide to grab his arm and pull him toward the boat. Mark was barely conscious as the guide hauled him out of the water. His injuries were severe, his arm was mangled, nearly severed, and deep gashes covered his torso. Blood poured from the wounds, pooling on the boat's deck as the crew worked frantically to stop the bleeding. Julia and the children were pulled aboard, their faces streaked with tears as they hovered over Mark, begging him to hold on. The undeterred shark circled the boat, its dorsal fin slicing through the surface. It bumped against the hull, testing for more prey. The crew banged on the side of the boat with paddles and poles, eventually driving it away. The predator disappeared deep, but the damage had already been done. Despite the crew's efforts, Mark succumbed to his injuries within minutes. The blood loss was too great, and the wounds were too severe. Julia and the children clung to his lifeless body, their sobs filling the air as the boat sped back to shore. The vibrant day they had started together had turned into a nightmare they would never forget. The attack shocked the local community and highlighted the risks of chumming the water during tours. Though rarely seen near shore, oceanic white-tip sharks were known for their boldness and aggression. The Evans family's vacation, meant to bring joy and memories, had ended in unimaginable tragedy. The tragedy brought immediate scrutiny to chumming during tours in the Bahamas. Shark-feeding excursions, while popular among tourists seeking close encounters with marine life, became controversial. Critics argued that these practices altered natural shark behavior, making them associate humans and boats with food. On the other hand, conservationists stressed that such interactions could increase awareness and appreciation of marine ecosystems if done responsibly. The Evans family's devastating loss reignited the debate, leading to calls for stricter regulations on shark-feeding tours. Local authorities and marine biologists began reviewing safety protocols, urging tour operators to prioritize public safety and ecological balance. On a humid August morning in 2010, the Gulf of Mexico stretched wide and shimmering under the pale light of dawn. Off the coast of Louisiana, fishing boats dotted the horizon, their crews beginning another hard day's work. Among them was the Sea Granger, a weathered but reliable vessel that had been Keith Brody's second home for over 20 years. Keith, a 47-year-old veteran fisherman, was known for his sharp instincts and unshakable calm under pressure. He had spent decades navigating these waters, hauling in shrimp, redfish, and other Gulf treasures. Keith's crew of 5 men respected him deeply. He wasn't just their leader, he was their friend, the one who shared stories over coffee at sunrise and kept morale high during the toughest stretches. Keith had been in good spirits this morning, joking with his crew as they loaded their nets and prepared for the long day ahead. They set out just as the first rays of light broke over the water, the hum of the engine blending with the sounds of gulls circling overhead. The Gulf of Mexico is a vibrant ecosystem, home to countless species of fish and marine predators. Among them were hammerhead sharks with their unmistakable mallet-shaped heads. While not as notorious as great whites, these predators were no less dangerous. They could grow up to 20 feet long, and their powerful jaws could easily crush prey. Hammerheads were known to patrol the Gulf's depths, and while attacks on humans were rare, fishermen respected their presence. The crew worked steadily through the morning, their nets heavy with shrimp and fish. Keith directed operations from the deck, his sharp eyes scanning the water for signs of movement. By mid-morning, they had pulled in several good hauls, the boat's hold filling with wriggling fish. The air was thick with the salty tang of the sea and the warm camaraderie of men who had worked together for years. By midday, the crew moved to a deeper part of the Gulf, hoping for one last big haul before heading back to shore. They cast their nets wide, letting them sink into the water. Keith stood at the boat's edge, watching intently as the lines tightened, signaling a catch. The men began hauling the net in, their muscles straining as they worked together to pull the heavy load to the surface. Then it happened. As Keith leaned over the rail to secure the net with a long hook, the boat rocked unexpectedly, jolted by a sudden wave. His boots slipped on the slick deck and he lost his balance. Keith tumbled overboard before anyone could grab him, hitting the water with a loud splash. The crew shouted alarmingly, rushing to throw ropes and life buoys into the water. Keith surfaced quickly, treading water as he reached for the nearest rope. The crew shouted encouragement, their voices tinged with panic. Keith paddled toward the boat, but a strong current tugged him sideways, pulling him just out of reach of the lifeline. Then from beneath him a dark shadow emerged. It was a hammerhead shark, its sleek body gliding silently through the water. The shark had likely been drawn to the commotion and the scent of fish spilling from the nets. At first, it circled Keith slowly, its dorsal fin slicing through the surface. The crew froze, their eyes wide with fear as they realized what was happening. The shark struck with shocking speed. It surged upward, its powerful jaws clamping onto Keith's shoulder. The force of the bite dragged Keith under the water, his scream muffled by the waves. Blood erupted into the water, spreading in a wide crimson cloud. Keith kicked and thrashed, punching at the shark's head with his free hand. His crew shouted frantically, throwing poles and other makeshift weapons into the water in a desperate attempt to scare the predator away. The shark released Keith briefly, but its attack wasn't over. It circled back, its movements swift and predatory. Keith struggled to swim toward the boat, his arm hanging uselessly at his side, blood streaming from the gaping wound on his shoulder. Just as he reached for a rope dangling from the side of the boat, the shark struck again, this time clamping onto his torso. The crew watched in horror as the shark's serrated teeth tore into Keith's side. The predator thrashed violently, shaking him like a rag doll. Keith's head broke the surface briefly, his face pale and twisted in agony. He gasped for air, his hand reaching toward the boat, but the shark dragged him under once more. The men quickly grabbed harpoons and poles to fend off the shark. One crew member jabbed at the predator, landing a solid hit near its dorsal fin. The shark recoiled, loosening its grip on Keith's mangled body. Seizing the moment, another crew member threw a rope tangled around Keith's arm, and the men pulled with all their strength. For a moment, it seemed they might save him. Keith surfaced, coughing and gasping, his movements weak but determined. The crew hoisted him partially onto the deck, their hands slick with his blood, but the shark wasn't finished. It surged upward one final time, its jaws clamping onto Keith's leg. The force pulled him out of the crew's grasp and back into the water. The shark thrashed furiously, its body twisting and rolling as it dragged Keith further from the boat. Blood churned the water, staining it a deep red. Keith's movement slowed, his strength finally giving out. The predator delivered the fatal strike, its jaws tearing through his torso before pulling him under completely. The water stilled, the only sound of the waves lapping against the hull. The crew stood frozen, their faces pale with shock. They scanned the water, hoping for some sign of Keith, but he was gone. All that remained was a lone boot and a fragment of his life vest bobbing on the surface. For the men aboard the Sea Granger, the loss was devastating. Keith Brody, their leader and friend, had been taken in a way none could have imagined. The attack shook the local fishing community, sparking questions about whether changing ocean conditions might influence shark behavior. Hammerhead sharks were not known for targeting humans, but this incident served as a grim reminder of the ocean's unpredictable nature. In August 2010, the Gulf of Mexico revealed its darker side. Keith's crew would never forget that day, and for those who knew him, it was a loss that left a lasting void.